Welcome to this episode of our podcast, where we will be discussing the rich and complex history of Afghanistan. Located in Central Asia, Afghanistan has a long and fascinating past, and has been shaped by a variety of cultural, political, and economic forces throughout its history. Afghanistan is a landlocked country located in Central Asia, bordered by Pakistan to the south and east, Iran to the west, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan to the north, and China to the far northeast. With a population of around 37 million people, Afghanistan is home to a diverse mix of ethnicities and languages, including Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, and Uzbek, among others. Throughout its history, Afghanistan has been a crossroads for various civilizations and empires, and has been conquered and ruled by a variety of powers, including the Persians, Alexander the Great, the Mughals, and the British Empire. Despite its tumultuous past, Afghanistan has a rich cultural heritage, with a strong tradition of poetry, music, and art. Today, Afghanistan is a sovereign state with an Islamic emirate system of government. Despite ongoing challenges and conflicts, Afghanistan is working to rebuild and modernize its economy and infrastructure, and is seeking to improve relations with its neighbors and the international community. That concludes our introduction and overview of Afghanistan's history and location. In the next segment, we will delve deeper into the pre-modern history of Afghanistan. Afghanistan has a long and storied history that dates back to ancient times. Some of the earliest civilizations to emerge in the region include the Aryan tribes who migrated to Afghanistan in the 2nd millennium BCE, and the ancient kingdom of Gandhara, which was located in what is now northern Afghanistan and Pakistan. The region was also conquered and ruled by various empires throughout its history, including the Persian Achaemenid Empire in the 6th century BCE, and the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE. Following the collapse of Alexander's empire, Afghanistan was briefly ruled by the Maurya Empire of India, before being conquered by the Kushan Empire in the 1st century CE. The Kushan Empire was a major center of Buddhism, and Afghanistan became an important hub for the spread of Buddhism throughout Central and Eastern Asia. In the 8th century CE, Afghanistan was conquered by the Arab Rashidun Caliphate, which introduced Islam to the region. Afghanistan became a part of the Islamic world, and over the following centuries, it was ruled by a series of Islamic dynasties, including the Ghurids, the Seljuks, and the Khwarezmians. During this time, Afghanistan was an important crossroads on the Silk Road, a network of trade routes that connected the East and West, and it was a major center of trade, culture, and learning. The pre-modern history of Afghanistan is rich and varied, and has been shaped by a variety of influences, including its location at the crossroads of various empires and civilizations. Islam first arrived in Afghanistan in the 7th century CE, when the Arab Rashidun Caliphate conquered the region and introduced Islam to the Afghan people. However, the adoption of Islam in Afghanistan was a gradual process, and it took several centuries for it to become the dominant religion in the region. The early Muslim rulers of Afghanistan, such as the Ghurids and the Seljuks, were primarily interested in maintaining their power and expanding their empires, and did not initially seek to forcibly convert the Afghan people to Islam. Instead, they allowed the local population to continue practicing their own religions, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, and many Afghans converted to Islam gradually over time. Over the following centuries, Islam became increasingly influential in Afghanistan, and it eventually became the dominant religion in the region. The rise of Islam in Afghanistan had a profound impact on the country's culture and society, as it introduced new customs, laws, and beliefs to the region. Islam also played a major role in shaping Afghanistan's political and economic systems. The Islamic concept of the caliphate, or a state ruled by a caliph who was the successor to the Prophet Muhammad, became an important model for governance in Afghanistan, and many of the country's rulers were caliphs or sultans who claimed to be the spiritual leaders of the Muslim world. Overall, the rise of Islam had a significant and lasting impact on Afghanistan, and it continues to play a central role in the country's culture and society today. In the 19th century, Afghanistan was caught in the middle of the Great Game, a geopolitical competition between the British and Russian empires for control of Central and Southern Asia. The British were particularly concerned about Russian expansion into Afghanistan, as they saw it as a threat to their own interests in the region. In 1839, the British sent a diplomatic mission to Afghanistan in an attempt to establish a treaty of friendship with the Afghan ruler, Dost Muhammad Khan. However, the mission ended in failure, and the two sides went to war. The First Anglo-Afghan War ended in a stalemate, with both sides suffering heavy losses, and Afghanistan remained an independent state. In the late 19th century, Afghanistan came under increasing pressure from the British, who sought to establish a sphere of influence in the region. In 1878, the British sent a second diplomatic mission to Afghanistan, which resulted in the Treaty of Gandamak, which recognized Afghanistan as a buffer state between the British and Russian empires. The Treaty of Gandamak did not go over well with the Afghan people, who saw it as a betrayal of their sovereignty. In 1879, the Afghan people rose up against the British, launching the Second Anglo-Afghan War. The war ended in a British victory, and Afghanistan was forced to accept a British resident in Kabul, who effectively controlled the country's foreign policy. Afghanistan remained under British influence until the Third Anglo-Afghan War in 1919, which resulted in Afghanistan's full independence from British rule. The colonial period had a significant impact on Afghanistan, as it introduced new technologies and ideas to the country, and changed its relationship with the rest of the world. After achieving independence from British rule in 1919, Afghanistan underwent a period of modernization and political reform. In the 1920s and 1930s, Afghanistan's king, Amanullah Khan, implemented a series of progressive policies, including the adoption of a new constitution, the establishment of a parliament, and the promotion of women's rights. However, Amanullah Khan's reforms were met with resistance from traditionalist and conservative elements of Afghan society, and he was eventually overthrown in a revolt in 1929. Afghanistan subsequently entered a period of political instability and internal conflict, with various factions vying for power. In the decades following World War II, Afghanistan experienced a series of coups and political upheavals, as various factions struggled for control of the government. In 1973, a coup led by General Muhammad Daud Khan toppled the monarchy and established a republic. However, Daud Khan's government was soon challenged by various factions, including communists and Islamic fundamentalists. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in an effort to prop up the communist government, which was facing a growing insurgency. The Soviet occupation of Afghanistan sparked a long and bloody war, which lasted for over a decade and resulted in the deaths of thousands of Afghan civilians. After the Soviet withdrawal in 1989, Afghanistan descended into a civil war, as various factions fought for control of the country. In 1996, the Taliban, an Islamic fundamentalist group, seized power and established an Islamic emirate in Afghanistan. The Taliban regime was known for its strict interpretation of Islam and its repressive policies, particularly towards women. In the years following the Taliban's takeover, Afghanistan became a haven for international terrorists, including Al-Qaeda, which used the country as a base for its operations. In 2001, the United States invaded Afghanistan in response to the September 11th attacks, and overthrew the Taliban regime. Since the fall of the Taliban, Afghanistan has struggled to rebuild and establish a stable and effective government. The country has faced ongoing challenges, including insurgency, corruption, and poor security. In recent years, the Afghan government has been working to negotiate a peace deal with the Taliban in an effort to end the conflict and bring stability to the country. However, the process has been slow and difficult, and Afghanistan continues to face a number of challenges as it works to rebuild and modernize its society. On August 17, 2021, the leader of the Taliban-affiliated Hezb-e-Islami Gabudin Party, Gabudin Hekmatyar, met with both Hamid Karzai, the former president of Afghanistan, and Abdullah Abdullah, the former chairman of the High Council for National Reconciliation and former chief executive, in Doha, Qatar, with the aim of forming a national unity government. President Ashraf Ghani, having fled the country during the Taliban advance, emerged in the United Arab Emirates and said that he supported such negotiations and was in talks to return to Afghanistan. Hours after the final flight of American troops left Kabul on August 30th, a Taliban official was quoted saying that a new government would likely be announced as early as September 3rd after Friday prayers. It was added that Hibatullah Akhundzada would be officially named emir, with cabinet ministers being revealed at an official ceremony. Abdul Ghani Baradar would be named head of government as prime minister, while other important positions would go to Sirajuddin Haqqani and Mullah Yaqub. Beneath the supreme leader, day-to-day governance will be entrusted to the cabinet. According to CNN, the new government is likely to be a unitary Deobandist Islamic Republic. In a report by CNN News 18, sources said the new government was going to be governed similarly to Iran, with Hibatullah Akhundzada as supreme leader, similar to the role of Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and would be based out of Kandahar. Baradar or Yaqub would be head of government as prime minister. The government's ministries and agencies will be under a cabinet presided over by the prime minister. The supreme leader would preside over an executive body known Supreme Council with anywhere from 11 to 72 members. Abdul Hakim Ishaqzai is likely to be promoted to Chief Justice. According to the report, the new government will take place within the framework of an amended 1964 Constitution of Afghanistan. However, later interviews disclosed to News 18 that negotiations were not yet completed and that representatives were still in Kandahar, and that the announcement of the new government would not take place until September 4th or later. Government formation was further delayed, with the announcement postponed to some time during the week of September 6, due to concerns about forming a broad-based government acceptable to the international community. It was later added, however, that the Taliban's Robbery Shura, the group's leadership council, was divided between the hardline Haqqani network and moderate Abdul Ghani Baradar over appointments needed to form an inclusive government. As of early September, the Taliban were planning the cabinet to be men only, stating that women would not be allowed to work in high-ranking posts in the government and that women were ruled out from the cabinet. Journalists and other human rights activists, mostly women, protested in Herat and Kabul, calling for women to be included in the cabinet. The acting cabinet announced on September 7 was men only, and the Ministry of Women's Affairs appeared to have been abolished. In terms of social issues, Afghanistan is a deeply conservative and traditional society, and many Afghans adhere to strict codes of conduct and traditional gender roles. Women's rights are a particularly sensitive issue in Afghanistan, and the country has a long history of discrimination and abuse against women. In recent years, the Afghan government has made some efforts to promote women's rights and improve the status of women in society, but much work remains to be done. The political crisis that began in August 2021 has led to a significant economic contraction in the country, increasing food insecurity and widespread deprivation. The preliminary official GDP statistics show that the economy contracted by 20.7% in 2021. The sudden cessation of aid led to a dramatic drop in public spending and aggregate demand, shrinking household incomes and reducing consumption. Afghanistan's financial sector also remains in crisis. The central bank has lost its ability to manage the payment systems and conduct monetary policy due to the freeze of offshore assets and its inability to print new Afghani currency notes. The resulting shortage of US dollars and Afghani and the sanctions have triggered a confidence crisis in the banking sector. The asset freeze and anti-money laundering and concerns over the financing of terrorism are hindering the functioning of normal correspondent banking relations between Afghan and foreign banks, and international banks are reluctant to re-establish correspondent relations with Afghan banks. The resumption of off-budget aid coming from the international community during the year has helped cushion some of the negative impacts of the widespread humanitarian crisis. The off-budget aid is intended to support humanitarian delivery and basic services, yet this was significantly lower than in the past. While inflation remains high, some economic indicators are improving. For example, exchange rate volatility has lessened, domestic revenue collection is relatively healthy, and exports have increased. Businesses are adjusting to new realities and are gradually starting to resume operations, albeit well below capacity. According to the latest private sector rapid survey conducted in June 2022, more than 3/4 of the firms were operational, compared to 2/3 in November 2021 at the time of the first round. The economy is now readjusting from the aid bubble, and the international community's ongoing humanitarian and off-budget basic service support is expected to mitigate some negative impacts of the contraction. Still, it will not be sufficient to bring the economy back on a sustainable recovery path. Under the baseline scenario where the country receives minimal international support for humanitarian activities and basic core services, the real GDP is projected to contract further in 2022, with an accumulated contraction of close to 30 to 35% between 2021 and 2022. The economy is projected to move to a low growth path, 2.0 to 2.4%, for the next 2 years, with no improvement in per capita incomes owing to high population growth and no significant improvement in poverty or food insecurity outlook. Inflation is expected to remain high immediately due to global commodity price increases and supply constraints, further eroding the real value of household incomes. At the same time, the interim Taliban administration's restrictive policies on women's education and work will lower Afghanistan's growth prospects. That's all for today's update on the economic situation in Afghanistan. We will continue to bring you the latest developments as they happen. Thank you for listening. In conclusion, we have explored the rich and complex history of Afghanistan, from its ancient empires and civilizations to its tumultuous 20th century and ongoing challenges in the 21st. We have also examined the country's diverse cultures and traditions, as well as its economic challenges and opportunities. As we have seen, Afghanistan is a country with a long and fascinating history, but it is also a country facing significant challenges. From ongoing conflict and insecurity, to economic development and rebuilding, Afghanistan has a long road ahead. However, there are also many opportunities for Afghanistan to build a better future for its people, and the country's strategic location and rich natural and cultural resources give it the potential to play a key role in the region and the world. Thank you for listening to this podcast on Afghanistan. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to our channel and checking out our other videos. We hope you have a better understanding of this important and fascinating country, and we look forward to sharing more insights with you in the future.